on November 20th. And so we're going to walk you through all 4 elements, and we're going to give you best practices, best tips. I've been managing this competition for 10 years, so I know what the judges are looking for. And if you are one of the 30, 40 people in this writing workshop, you're going to get the inside tips on how to be successful in this competition. So thanks for being here. And if you didn't attend an information session already, we had 3 information sessions that we've held over the past month and a half. Those are all on our website under bigideascontest.org/events. So I encourage everybody to go back to those information sessions, those workshops, watch the recording on our website. That'll give you a little bit more detail, because I'm going to run kind of quickly through some of the information up front, and I'm going to dig into really the elements of the pre-proposal in depth. And then we're going to go over a previous example, a proposal that was submitted to Big Ideas that actually won Big Ideas. And we're going to spend some time just workshopping that, talking about the strengths and the weaknesses based upon the information I give you. And then last, but certainly not least, we're going to do a really comprehensive overview of the landscape analysis section, the market landscape analysis section led by the IMAGINEi5 team. So I wanted to first introduce myself. So I'm Philip Denny. I've talked to many of you. I see a lot of faces here on the Zoom call, people who I've done advising with. So thanks for joining us. But I'm Philip Denny. I'm the director of the Big Ideas competition. This is a competition that started at UC Berkeley back in 2006, but now it's expanded really rapidly over the rest of the UC system. So we're really pleased to have students, it looks like, from almost every campus represented tonight. Okay, so what is Big Ideas? Big Ideas is really the earliest stage innovation competition across the UC system. We provide funding support, inspiration and validation and recognition to interdisciplinary teams of students who have creative solutions to pressing social challenges. Again, if you've been to an information session, I don't want to be too repetitive, but the types of projects, the tie that binds all these big ideas together across all these different categories that students can apply to is, number 1, that they're student-led, second, that they're early stage ventures, and number 3 is that they are trying to improve the world or our communities or the planet in some way. So they have that social impact focus. And we have a lot of different categories in the competition this year, everything from art and social change to workforce development, new categories around pandemic response in data and AI. And I'll talk to you about how you select those categories in your application and how you mark secondary categories in your application if you have more than one sort of tie into these categories. So we'll talk about that in a minute as well. Also want to make everybody on the call aware of other awesome opportunities that we have coming up for Big Ideas. So you have just under a month now to develop your big idea. But we have a lot of resources between now and then to help you with that application process. So tonight we have our writing workshop and market landscape analysis session. Then on November 3rd, we have a special award this year for the innovation that has both social impact and a dual use innovation for national security. We have a partnership with the National Security Innovation Network. So if you're interested in that, if you think that your project also can impact the security of our nation, then I encourage you to come and learn more on November 3rd about that. We have a second writing workshop, and in that writing workshop, we're going to focus on how do you tell your innovation story, your narrative for your Big Ideas proposal in a really compelling, engaging way that grabs the judges, that makes you noticed in the competition. This is something a lot of students struggle with. So we added that storytelling for innovation workshop on November 5th. So even if you're coming to this one tonight, you can come to that storytelling for innovation and really learn how to craft that compelling narrative. Then on November 9th, we're going to have an industry advising clinic where students can sign up for one-on-one appointments with industry advisors. These are people from our Big Ideas network with backgrounds in global health and energy and resources and food and agriculture and workforce development. And they're going to come meet with you. You can sign up for one-on-one appointments with these industry professionals. And it's about 2 weeks or a little less before our deadline. So you can get really great, insightful feedback on your proposal just prior to the deadline. And then another opportunity just before the deadline is the pre-proposal editing blitz, where me and my Big Ideas team will be hosting 45-minute appointments where you drop in, you bring your draft of your proposal, and we just run through it with you, give you all of our feedback so that you can go and hone that application in the last 24, 48 hours and make it a really strong, compelling application. Above all that, we also have ongoing advising hours. So if you go to our website, bigideascontest.org/advising, myself, Corinna Rehorn, who's on the call, and our other innovation ambassadors across the UC system all have advising hours, and you can schedule appointments with us just to bounce ideas off us, to check eligibility requirements, anything you need, we're here for you between now and November 20th. Okay, so let's get into the application itself, because that's why you're here. You want to know more about how to develop your application. So again, deadline, can't emphasize it enough, November 20th at 1 p.m. What you have to have by then is a 3-page proposal maximum. Citations are the only thing that are allowed past the 3rd page. So make sure you adhere to that page limit. Yeah, endnotes, put the citations for your endnotes on page 4. That's permissible. Appendices are not allowed in the pre-proposal application. So those letters of support, the customer discovery surveys, whatever it might be, you can't have those in the appendices. Everything has to be within the 3 pages for the pre-proposal. In this part of the application, we don't ask for a timeline, we don't ask for a budget. We're really focused on how creative, how innovative the project is. So we're not focused yet on viability and sustainability. That becomes more important in the 2nd round. So timeline and budget are not required in this 1st round. And then the font, the formatting, the way you lay out your proposal, how you tell your story is entirely up to you. You can use images and charts and graphics. Those do count towards the 3-page limit. The only thing we really require is that you don't try and squeeze a 10-page proposal into 3 pages by using 0.6 font and pulling the margins out to the edge. So use standard font size, standard margins, and limit it to 3 pages. Beyond that, you know best how to tell your innovative story. You know best how to convey your innovation. So it's up to you in terms of formatting and flexibility. I'll stop there. Any questions about the rules overview before we dig into the actual components? Okay, we'll keep going through this then. Okay, so everything that I'm going to go through with you tonight can be found on our website under bigideascontest.org/rules. We have the eligibility requirements, the application requirements, the judging criteria. We have examples of past proposals. We'll workshop one of those tonight. We have writing tips. I definitely encourage you to look at the writing tips. Those are sort of compiled from some of the best practices that we've learned over the course of running this competition. So bigideascontest.org/rules. Make sure you check out that page. If you don't adhere to all the elements that are required in the application, you could be disqualified. So make sure you know these backwards and forwards and come to us for advising if you have questions. Okay, so now what I want to do is quickly walk you through an application platform. I don't know if any of you applied to Big Ideas in the past? Because if you have, we have a new application platform this year. It's called Submittable. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually go to the website. So as I mentioned, this is the bigideascontest.org/rules page where you can find everything you need, the pre-proposal elements, the judging criteria, frequently asked questions. 3 examples. We're going to workshop the Pika Pen example. So remember this page because we're going to come back to it later. But we also have examples of other winning proposals: Dosed Education, Amplify Impact, and writing tips. Okay. And when you have read all this, when you've drafted your 3-page narrative, when you've had your Big Ideas team member look it over, your innovation ambassador look it over, and you're ready to apply, or even before then, actually, I would encourage you to get on this sooner rather than later. You click on the Apply Now button. It will take you to this page, and you can read sort of the deadline, what's involved, hit submit. And if you already have an account, you can sign in here. If you created an account, you can sign in there, or if you need to create an account. And I have created an account. So let's go in and look at the application really quickly so that you can understand what's involved. Okay, so this is the application platform. You put in your project name, whether or not you've won a previous, the project that you're applying with is they won a previous Big Ideas award. That is just a check because if you've won an award for this project from Big Ideas in the past, you're no longer eligible for Big Ideas. We have a separate competition called Scaling Up, which is for past winners only, that opens in January. But then you have to fill in information on your project. You have to fill in information on this on a 50-word elevator pitch or a positioning statement on your project. And that's really important as well. So our 2020 grand prize winner, he had a great positioning statement for his proposal that went, FootMo Kit is a low-cost, portable, handheld device that diagnoses foot and mouth disease in livestock in hard-to-reach, underserved areas through early disease detection, empowering farmers to detect diseases without relying on veterinary doctors. So in that, that's about 45 words. You got low cost, you got portable, his entire value proposition positioning statement in that 50-word elevator pitch. Then you have to put in a longer 150-word summary where you can get a little bit more into the problem and the solution. We ask you a few other questions. You apply to one primary track. So for instance, that project, the foot and mouth project, would have applied to food and agriculture, but it also had a data and artificial intelligence component to it. So food and agriculture was the primary category. And then down here, he selected a secondary category of data and AI. Okay. And then on top of that, you put in your team members, a lot of information about them. You then go down here, you upload your pre-proposal, you select your file. So everything is right there in the application form for you. What I encourage you to do is you can start your application today and you can begin to fill out this information. If you have team members, there's a button right up here. You can invite your team members to collaborate on this application with you by putting in their email address here. So you can work collaboratively with your team on the proposal, on the form, but get going earlier rather than later. The whole application process takes about 30 to 45 minutes. There's a survey at the end because we want to understand what you've gained from big ideas and where you are as an entrepreneur. So make sure you leave 30 to 45 minutes to do this. I've had a lot of teams panic right before the deadline, leaving 10 minutes before the 1 p.m. deadline and not completing the application on time. So start early and work on this, I would say, even today. Okay, now let's go back to the pre-proposal writing element. Okay, so the next piece that I want to go over are the 4 major components to the big ideas pre-proposal. There is the problem statement, the existing solutions, the proposed innovation section, and the team bios. So those are the 4 elements that you need to have to put together your pre-proposal application. One optional area that I actually encourage a lot of teams to put into their application is up top at the very front of your proposal. It helps to have that 150-word summary that you've included in the web form that we just saw. The reason I ask teams often to put that in there is it just lays the groundwork, gives the reader the context before they dive into your proposal. It gives them a reference point before they launch in. So if you have the space, I definitely encourage you to put your 150-word summary atop your proposal. When the judges start to review your proposal, what they're going to see first is a sort of a window, a web frame that should have the 150-word summary, the title of your proposal, and then they click on your application. But judges sometimes go through that quickly. So adding your 150-word summary atop your 3-page proposal often can help, okay? So the problem statement. The problem statement, you really want to cite the reason for why you want to engage with this problem. One of my favorite questions when I talk to students is, why out of all the challenges in the world are you choosing this particular challenge to work on and try and solve? We want you to really think about a connection to this issue to some degree. We don't want it to be an overly emotional appeal, but we want to help the reader understand why you're working on this particular challenge. That's just a connection. When judges can see that there's a tie between you and the problem, that translates into judges as passion, as dedication. They know that often when startups are challenged, which happens all the time, when the going gets tough, you're going to stick with this. So if there is a connection to the issue, it's great to start off your problem statement with that. But what your problem statement should really be about is the relevant research, the relevant statistics to document the challenge, to document the population that you want to serve, to make them understand that you know the ethical, cultural, and legal considerations of operating in this environment, to make them understand that you have done the research and the homework. If you've done interviews, it's a great place to include here, so that they know you understand the population and the market that you want to work in. Also, by talking about that target population, you're showing them the extent of the impact that this project can have. If you're working in a community of 10,000 people, you should talk about that. You should talk about the demographics of that community, sort of the challenges that community is facing. That is the potential for social impact in that community. Okay. What you shouldn't do with your problem statement is make it an overly emotional appeal, something that relies a lot on ambiguous statements. This should be your research section of your proposal. Okay, so let's say you're inventing a water filtration system in a remote community in Panama that currently has limited access to safe drinking water. Okay, I'll read that again. You are inventing a water filtration system for a remote community in Panama that currently has limited access to safe drinking water. If that is what you want to do, what sort of research or statistics do you think you would be looking at? Anybody want to answer that question? What sort of research statistics do you think you would want to pull if that was your innovation? Anybody?
Maybe the direct people who don't have access, like actual numbers, percentage of population without direct access.
That would be great, right? So you could talk, yeah, you could sort of first go from a broad perspective of how many people across the world lack access to clean, safe, drinkable water. And then if you can narrow it down even more into that target population and begin to pull together the demographics of who in that community, what percentage of people in that community lack access to safe water. And then if you can even document what are the impacts that that is having on the health of that particular population. If this is an innovation that's going to pilot in one community in Panama and extend to others, then you can draw out your statistics, your research to include a larger section of the population. But really, yeah, you want to go in there and you want to narrow down your statistics, your research as much as you can to the population that you are intending to serve. So that's really good. Okay, so tips for this section, the problem statement section. State, but don't overstate the obvious. So, and don't use too many obvious stats and assumptions. Some problems are just more obvious than others. You don't have to convince people in depth that things like climate change and cancer are bad. And I see this all the time in proposals. They go on and on. There is a strong understanding, but if your solution, if your challenge is more nuanced, then you have to give a lot more detail and you have to give a lot more research and statistics. So don't overstate the obvious, really tie it to the population you want to serve. Stay objective with your problem statement. Don't make it an argument, a passion plea. Be objective. You can use citations, and I encourage you to use citations throughout this section. And don't be overly grim with the problem statement. I know you're talking about the problem and all the negative things that can come from this problem, but try to end with something hopeful in this section. Try and end with, what if this problem were solved? What could it lead to? And that will begin to take you into the next section, but try not to be overly grim with this section, or you'll just beat down the judges. Okay. The second section that you're going to work on is the landscape analysis or existing solutions section. And we're going to go over this in a lot more depth tonight with the IMAGINEi5 team. So I'm not going to cover it too much tonight because Adriana and Sarah are going to cover this in depth. But this is routinely cited, and the reason we have this workshop tonight is it's routinely cited as the weakest element in student applications for big ideas by the judges. So students will propose an idea without identifying other innovations that have effectively addressed the problem at hand. It's not about just developing a similar project or product. It's about talking about what other types of innovations look like yours, may have tried to do similar things in the past, and how can you borrow from or learn from what's come before you? How can you take best practices from those? Not just identifying gaps, but actually using the other technologies and systems that were designed for similar challenges and building upon those. Understanding that for the things that didn't work so well, what challenges did they run into? Where did they get traction? Where did they not get traction? And how can you use those lessons learned again to build off those? So certain ways teams do this, and we'll talk about this a little bit more tonight, is using a 2x2 matrix where they compare sort of their value propositions against other companies, against other innovations in that same landscape. So this was one for Airbnb when they were brand new. That's their early stage logo. And this was comparing Airbnb against the other websites on affordability and ease of online transaction. As you can see, VRBO had offline transactions, but was very inexpensive, and hotels.com was expensive, but and online. Airbnb, their value proposition was that they were both affordable, and the ease of doing online transactions was greatly increased. So this is a great sort of initial 2x2 matrix that a lot of teams use for big ideas. Also, what we see a lot of in big ideas is the competitive features matrix, where you list out all of the features of your product and features of the other products, and you can show how you are a comprehensive solution to all of those features. You're sort of the all-in-one package. So a lot of teams will use this as well. Any questions on those two things? Okay, go ahead.
What if there are not many similar, like ideas like that?
Yeah.
Like, what if like it's a really open problem and there are not many solutions to that, or like there are like even if there are significantly different from our ideas? Like, how can you like cover this part?
So if they're significantly different, you talk about the gaps that are still open, that are needed, the solutions that are needed to sort of fill in those gaps. So you talk about those challenges. The one real big caution I have here is when students tell me there's no other innovation out there like this. Nobody's working on what I'm working on. When you say that to me, or you say that to a judge for big ideas, my immediate thought is why? Why not? Why hasn't anybody? Is there not a market? Is there not a need? Is there not a demand? So it's good to have competition. It's good to have, learn from other projects that have come before you that have tried to solve these challenges, successful or not. But if there's truly nobody out there like you, then you really are sort of pushed to ask the question of why not. You have to be able to talk about why your innovation is needed and what gap it's filling. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So now the meat of your proposal, the really heavy piece of your proposal is the proposed innovation section. This is the heart of your proposal. It explains the goals of your project. The goals are sort of the abstract, larger things that you're aiming to achieve. It also talks about the objectives, so goals and objectives. The objectives are really the specific activities or the milestones that you will have to point to along the way. These should be, the goals are measurable outcomes. I'm sorry, the objectives are the measurable outcomes, and the goals are sort of the high level objectives. So in your proposed innovation section, you should be breaking down both of these things, okay? I always love to start out my proposed innovation section with that value proposition, with that positioning statement. Again, I'll go back to the Footmo kit example. When they say Footmo kit is 1, low cost, 2, accurate, 3, easy to use, point of care diagnostic for foot and mouth disease in livestock. Right there, they've listed out their 4 key value propositions or positioning statements. And then they should have, and they did in their proposal, have a paragraph or a half a paragraph on how they were developing their innovation in those 4 areas. How was it low cost? What was the cost in comparison to other technologies that do similar services? How was it accurate? How much more accurate than the existing services? Easy to use. When they're easy to use, they were putting this in the hands of farmers, and farmers were able in 2 hours through a training to be able to use this on their own cattle. Therefore, they didn't have the need for training after that, and it was maintainable as well. So make sure that with the proposed innovation, you lay out your goals, your objectives, you talk about that positioning statement, and then you back it up. This should really be not just a research paper, not just an invention story, but we want to know how you're going to get this off the ground and what is your value added. So that goes to the next thing, which is goals and objectives. We talked about your theory of change. So how is this innovation, once you've developed it, how is this system, technology, or program, how are you going to get it off the ground, and how will it have an impact on people? So it's not good enough to just say, I have a great invention. Many inventions start off and they don't end up in the hands of the people that need them. You have to have a plan for getting this off the ground and how it will impact people's lives. You have to have sort of an outreach strategy and implementation strategy to back it up. And that takes you over here to the outreach and implementation. This is one area where a lot of teams fall short. They talk about the invention for 90% of their project, and they have this sense of, if we build it, they will come. We know that's not true. So you have to back up your invention or your system or your policy or your program with how you will get it out there in the hands of users so that it can have impact in the real world. If you have, and many teams don't at this stage of big ideas, but if you have prototypes, if you have wireframes, you can include those in your application. Again, they count towards the 3-page pre-proposal application, but they often are good to give the reader a really clear sense of what it is you're building, especially if it's a really technologically high-end project. So if it's a service or a program and you don't have a prototype, great. But if it's a really, and we'll go through an example later, but if it's a really intense technology that's hard to describe in words, use diagrams, use images, and let those count towards your 3-page proposals. Okay. Another area that, this is probably the second most called out area that judges look at, and it is the potential challenges. Because you're writing an application that you want judges to think positively about, a lot of students don't talk about the negative potential challenges that could come in. Legal, IP, regulatory issues that might be roadblocks to you implementing this project. The problem is, if you don't mention those and the judges pick up on them, that's the quickest way to lose a judge. If they identify the challenges and the risks before you and you don't talk about them in your proposal and address how you might overcome those, they're going to dock you points, to put it plain and simple. So address the potential challenges, talk about them, and have some thoughts as to how you might sort of overcome whatever risks, whatever challenges may be presented along your pathway towards launching this social venture. Okay. And then the other thing that can go into this section is talking about partners and networks, ones that you've either established already, and in many cases at this stage of big ideas, they aren't established, but talk then about who are the potential players who are out there who you might be able to partner with. Understand the landscape of people who are working in the same space, who you can leverage and work with to grow your innovation and to get it into the hands of the people who need it, who can help to fund it maybe down the road, or even who can help, run this program down the road. It's great to mention at least that you know the landscape and you know the people who are working in the space who you might partner with. Okay, so the tips for this section that I would give you is that this is a 3-page application. Every single sentence in your application should carry meaning. Don't make the common mistake again that if you build it, they will come. Big Ideas is not an invention competition. It's not a hackathon. It's a platform for launching a social venture. And that's what we want to see you thinking about, is how you're going to get this great invention, innovation off the ground. Avoid words that are buzzwords. Words like sustainable. Don't say sustainable. Say that it's going to have a lower environmental impact. Don't use things like holistic. Describe, holistic is talking about interconnected pieces and how they come together. So to describe those interconnected pieces and actually how they come together. Again, address your challenges and talk about the key partnerships. Those are key. Any questions on the proposed innovation section?
Hi, yeah, I'm Kelly. I just had a clarification question for you when you said don't use buzzwords. When you say that, is it kind of just like don't be too vague and to be specific in what we mean by those buzzwords more so, rather than avoiding those words altogether?
Yeah, that's a good question. If you use the buzzwords, back up what you mean with the intention. So again, if you use holistic, talk about what are the interconnected pieces that make it a holistic system. Don't just use the word holistic. That's what I often see, because it's a short proposal. People are trying to fit a lot of buzzwords in to get that across. But if you do that without backing it up, It's not going to carry much weight with the judges. They're not going to know what you're talking about.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions on this?
I have a quick question. How do you describe your product and the technology essentially, but without like giving everything away if there's proprietary information in there that, especially if it's a product that needs to be patented? How do you get around that problem?
That's a really good question too. So with big ideas, when a judge signs up to review proposals, they have a confidentiality agreement. Before they review any proposal, they have to check a box that says they will not share or disseminate this information with anybody. When you apply on that form I showed you earlier, there's a checkbox where if you want to keep your 3-page proposal confidential, you just check that box. We won't share it with anybody beyond the judges. The judges have signed a confidentiality agreement. The only thing we will use is the 150-word summary that you put into the web form. That is public information that we want to be able to talk about the great projects that have come through Big Ideas, and we want to use that 150-word summary. So if you have proprietary information, don't put it in your 150-word summary. Check that box that says, I want to keep this confidential, and then you can put anything you want in the 3-page pre-proposal and know that that's protected.
I have a question. The idea, does it have to be complete original, or can it be an improvement of something that's already out there?
Great question again. And so you're asking basically what is our definition of innovation, and replicating a system that's working in one place and bringing it to a new context, to a new geography, a twist on an existing innovation to apply it in a new way. Those are innovative in our opinion. That's a great innovation. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a new technology. It can be an adaptation of a technology for a new context, for a new geography, for a new environment. That's perfectly fine. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, terrific. Any others?
I have another question.
Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
So this, I think I read somewhere that this proposal should be an outlook of the first year of this project. So let's say our goal is to have like, I don't know, worldwide change, but we're gonna start with one country. Should we talk about only the one country or the overall goal
That's
in
a
the
really
future?
good point. And I should have mentioned that. So yeah, so we want your pre-proposal application to focus on, this is essentially going to turn into an implementation plan for your 1 year, for your first year of operation. So you should really be talking, I would say 80 to 90% about your implementation, your pilot project for that first year. If you have a broader vision beyond this, then you can talk about sort of at the end of your proposed innovation section, basically you can say something along the lines of, once we are successful or once we have learned from our pilot, we intend to replicate this in X, Y, Z geographies in transition to making this a global resource. So I think you just quickly wrap up with that larger vision in your proposed innovation section, but 80 to 90% of your proposed innovation section should be focused on the first year of implementation. Okay.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, we're gonna move on here. If you have questions and you wanna get to me later, you can find me at bigideascontest.org/advising, schedule an advising session with myself, Karana, who's also on the line, or any of our innovation investors. Okay, so the last section I want to cover is team bios. So this is really talking about who is on your team, what are the relevant roles and skills that you need to have on your team to be successful if we give you funding. So keep this relevant to the role that each person will be playing on your team. So if you have somebody who will be your chief business officer, talk about their finance background and what they've done experience-wise that would contribute to that role. Also, if you don't have somebody yet on your team, the judges are going to be asking themselves, do they have the people in place, or do they have the roles identified that they would need to have on this project if they were given funding in order to implement the project? So it's okay not to have a person in place just yet, but identify what roles, what skill sets you are lacking, and even better, if you can come up with a strategy for recruiting that person and talking about when you might bring them on board. So it's okay to have gaps in your team right now, but as you continue to build, you should be thinking about how to fill those gaps.
Excuse me.
Yep.
Yeah, I have a question. Sorry for interrupting. So, in terms of team members, they should all be students, or they can be from out of the university.
Yeah. So number one, watch the information session recording. We talk about that in depth. But the short of it is that the team lead for your project has to be a matriculated UC system student. Anybody else beyond that can contribute to your project and be a team member. So you can use students from other campuses. You can use industry professionals. It doesn't matter. For the team bios, yeah, for your team, you can have other people beyond the initial UC student who's the lead of the project.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Okay. Now the judging criteria, what the judges are going to be looking for, how you'll be scored or graded on this is 40% innovation and creativity. So as you're talking about your pre-proposal, keep that in mind. 40% is on innovation, 30% is on social impact, 70% of your score on those two components alone. The methodology of Big Ideas is we want to identify the most creative, cutting edge ideas that students are working on. And we want to work with the most creative in the second round and help them become viable, sustainable social ventures. So we focus much more on viability and sustainability in the second part of the round. But as you're talking about your pre-proposal, as you're crafting your narrative, play up what is most innovative about your proposal. If it's an education program and it's the methodology, the structure of the curriculum that is the most innovative aspect, talk about that and talk about why it is innovative compared to what everybody else is doing. If it's a technology that's never been developed that has a really cool twist, talk about the cool technology twist. But innovation, creativity, play it up big time. And then social impact, that's going to come through with your problem statement when you're talking about the size of the population that you're hoping to serve, and the solution and how it can impact that population, or the longer term vision might also be a part of this. But social impact is 30%. Viability is only 20% in this round. That's the extent to which this really can take off, what the judges see as, the potential for this to actually be a real live innovation, lasting, sustainable innovation. That's 20% in this round, but that gets bumped up to 40% in the next round. And then the last section is proposal quality. And that quite honestly is the judge's wiggle room to step back and say, do they think this proposal was compelling? Was it well written? Was it persuasive? In light of the other proposals they've read, does it stand the same quality test? So that's proposal quality. Okay. So I'll take a few questions there before we dive in and workshop the Pika Pen proposal for about 10 minutes. Any other questions?
I do have one question, Philip.
Yep.
So are we going to post these slides anywhere or send them out?
That's a really good question. I certainly can. Yeah, we'll post them on the website tomorrow. Easy
Great,
to do.
thanks.
Yep.
I
Okay.
have a question.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the word social ventures a lot. Will a venture which involves biodiversity and conservation include in this bracket?
Oh, by all means. So I use social venture rather than saying company or business because a lot of the projects coming out from Big Ideas are focused more on social impact than generating financial return and turning into full-fledged companies. Some are for-profit, some are nonprofits, some are hybrid, some are service organizations that students are starting. So as long as it is student-led, early stage, and can in some way impact our society, our environment, our planet, our communities, then it's a social venture in my book.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So what I want everybody to do, hopefully you're all in front of your computers because you're looking at me on Zoom. I want you to go to bigideascontest.org/rules. And you'll see on the right-hand side, the Pika Pen example. So I want you to click on that. What I'm going to do is give you guys, it's 5:41. We want to be wrapped up by 6 o'clock or by 5:50 or so. I know Adriana and Sarah. So what I'm going to do is give you 4 minutes to read the proposal. And then we're going to send you into breakout rooms for another 4 minutes. And then we're going to come back out and talk about it. What I want you to do is read the proposal. Tell me what you think was strong based upon what we've reviewed in terms of the proposal elements. What's strong about the proposal? What's weak about the proposal? Any comments, suggestions you have. So go to bigideascontest.org/rules, start reading. You'll find yourself going into a breakout room in a moment, and then you'll have 2 other people in there with you, and you as a team just brainstorm the good and bad of the Pika Pen proposal. Okay? Sound good? Okay, so we'll give you till 5:45 to read, and then we'll give you till just before 5:50 to brainstorm as a group, and then we'll call you back out here.
A quick question.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask, what is the background of the judges? Are they all PhD scientists or angel investors, or a combination of the two?
So we have more than 300 judges, typically 200 to 300 judges participating in the pre-proposal round, because last year, just to give you a scope, we had 438 projects representing 1,200 students. So they come from every background that you can imagine. Some have, backgrounds in the sectors like art and social change, or energy and resources, or financial inclusion. Others are VCs and people from the startup community that have a more sort of varied background. So as you're writing your proposal, you should be writing to a general audience. Even if you are in the energy and resources category, you cannot assume that the person has sort of an energy background. They might be somebody from a VC person who has, more experience in helping startups launch. So write to a general audience, but they come from all over, California, the world, in fact.
Thanks. And how many judges read one proposal?
Yep. So we have at least 6 to 8 judges read each proposal. And we keep the number of proposals each judge reads very low too, so that they can provide a lot of qualitative feedback to the teams. So regardless of whether or not you make it to the second round, you're going to get all the qualitative feedback that the judges who reviewed your proposal have. So there's a takeaway for finalists and non-finalists in that regard. But each judge reads 6 to 8 proposals, and each proposal is read 6 to 8 times.
Thank you.
Okay. So Adriana, whenever you're ready to start shooting people to breakout rooms.
So breakout rooms are open, so you should be able to join.
Yep.
I think everyone is back now.
Everyone is back. Well, welcome back. So now we just want to talk about, I know that was really quick, but I want to just quickly talk about what you saw in that proposal that you thought was good and what you thought was not so good. And we can talk about this for a little bit. So does somebody want to throw out one good thing about the proposal? One of the teams.
Yes, can I?
Go ahead, Victoria.
They stated what exactly prohibits autistic children to write properly. So the pressure, where the pressure points are, etc.
So a clear sort of understanding of the needs or the struggles of the community that they want to serve. Yep.
They gave examples of other pens on the market that more or less address the same need.
Yep. Good. Yeah. So a good sort of landscape of similar products.
Yes.
Yep. I totally agree with that. Any other good things?
They addressed initial use, and then like other uses, like starting with autistic kids and then like scaling up to other disabilities or stroke victims and things like that.
They showed a pathway for how they were going to sort of kind of build this and where they were going to start and where they wanted to get to. I think that's really important. Yep.
So their data points connected with the story, like they mentioned 1.5 million Americans. At the same time, they also mentioned 1 in 110 American children. So it made a lot of sense.
Yeah, they had a really good mix of statistics and interviews. That was, I think, one of the biggest strengths is they really had researched this. They knew exactly the target market. They knew the audience. They knew the statistics behind it. That's a solid point.
I do also want to say, however, not every single kid with autism is going to have issues writing. So just because they're saying 1.5 million Americans are going to have autism, that doesn't mean every single one is going to be a customer.
That's a good point too. So a little bit overly broad definition.
Yeah, so that's probably, I mean, it's good to know how many kids have autism, but that's a potential market, not a direct market.
Yeah, it's definitely not the TAM. But it is. Yeah, but it's the audience they want to serve, but not the total. I totally get that. I'll tell you one thing that I really like. So I'm a political science major. I have no technology background, but the one piece out of this that I loved was when they compared their technology to the Wii, because everybody knows how what a Wii is and how it interacts and can use it. So being able to boil it down, we have another project that came through Big Ideas that is using people's homes as co-working spaces, and they describe themselves as the Airbnb meets WeWork. And just using analogies like that, I think throughout your proposal to sort of, I don't want to say dumb it down for people like me, it does help though. So yes, I would definitely encourage that kind of stuff too. A couple other things I saw, they use that visual, that diagram, because their project was very, very technical. But that diagram very quickly conveyed to me what it was about, what the features, what the core components were, a lot quicker than something, or a lot easier to understand than would have been used by text. So I think that was a really good thing. How about some not so good things really quickly?
I guess one thing I would have liked to know more about was like the sentence they said is based on our research and close discussions with our occupational therapist partners, we will develop a pen that contains the necessary sensors and biofeedback indicators. I would have really liked to hear what the specific input those occupational therapists might have had in order to say, why is this the necessary sensor and why do they use these particular feedback indicators?
Yep. So a little bit of better understanding of the reasoning behind some of the technological components. And I think you guys will run into the same challenge. It's a 3-page application, and there's going to be a lot more. Your first draft is probably going to be 10 pages, and you're going to have to boil it down to 3. So there's going to be things that you have to make smart decisions on what to cut, and that's helpful to come to an advising session for. What about it? What else? Anything else that you saw as a weakness?
I saw like.
Sorry.
Mega?
Yeah, I saw like they mentioned about we're going to offer this at a cheaper price than the other competitors. I would have liked to know how they're able to do that, because they're making a more advanced pen.
Yep. Yeah, they don't really talk about a price point for their project, and they don't talk about how they're going to lower the cost based upon the competitors and the technology and what goes into it and how that all works. So yeah, understanding the price point a little bit better would have been great. And then 1 or 2 more.
I felt a more of a story could have been created. It was a little wordy. I felt like if maybe they had worked on maybe the editing to maybe create a story,
Yep.
a story, painting a picture with words.
Yep. So this was a proposal, I think you hit the nail on the head, Cheryl, and this was a proposal written by engineers, and it sounded like it was written by engineers.
Yes.
And it comes back to your pre-proposal, you want it to grab the judges. You want to get their attention. That's the most important thing. You want to tell a story of your innovation, but also back it up. So I can't oversell that point. Make it a compelling story, engage the judges. They're human. They're going to be reading 6 to 8 proposals in a row sometimes. So you got to make yours stand out. So tell a story, make it compelling. Don't sound like engineers, even if you are. And then the other things I'll just quickly run through that I saw with this, they didn't really connect themselves to the issue in any way, which sometimes there's not a connection to the issue. It's just something you're working on with friends. But if you can, do that. And other than that, I think you guys got pretty much everything I had down as a not so good for this proposal, but this did end up winning a Big Ideas Award, just so you know. Okay. So good work on that, everyone. Hopefully you learned a little bit more and got some tips on how to enhance your proposal. We look forward to working with you. But right now, what I want to do is I want to turn it over to Adriana and Sarah, who are going to go in a lot more detail into that landscape analysis section, that market landscape analysis section.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Philip and Karina, for taking us through the application. I think like now that we have a framework to work based off of, we can take you through what the marketing landscape analysis is and how you can apply it in a little bit deeper in this workshop. So stay tuned, don't leave us. We're here. So who we are. So Sarah and I are MBA candidates at UC Berkeley, and found each other in order to think, to create a think tank in order to educate entrepreneurs, help each other in the entrepreneurship, incubation, acceleration space. So I'm gonna pass it all to Sarah to tell us a little bit about herself. And go ahead.
Adriana. Yeah, so a little bit about me. I'm an engineer in the medical device industry, and I also serve as a consultant. And as Adriana mentioned, we both work on IMAGINEi5 and UC Berkeley MBA candidates. So we're excited to be working with you all, especially we are very passionate about social impact. So that's our area of focus.
Yeah. So, and I'm the chemical engineer and I work in the agricultural sector. And yeah, super passionate about social impact because I I do a lot of Engineers Without Borders, and I'm very passionate about like helping globally and seeing like what the change can be. So let's go on. So what is the goal of this session today? So we're gonna help you identify the potential target customer and your positioning statement. So you heard from Philip that the positioning statement is part of the application. It's very important. So it's really good that you're here. We're gonna give you tools to do a marketing analysis for your big ideas contest and application. Okay. So this session is gonna consist of 3 portions. First, we're gonna talk about the segmentation. Then we're gonna take you through targeting, and then finalize with the positioning statement, giving you some tools in order to help you develop that application. Okay, so the end result of this session is this positioning statement that looks like this. So it starts by, unlike our competitors, our product brand idea offers a differentiation for target customers. So in terms of the competitors and a differentiator, so we're gonna be using tools like the 2x2 and the competitive analysis to get you there. And then for targeted customers, we're gonna use segmentation and targeting, and we're gonna go deeper in that section. Okay, so first of all, I just wanna know a little bit about you in order to figure out how to talk about marketing. So tell us, how familiar are you with the marketing, segmentation, targeting, and positioning work? Are you someone that has never heard of it? Are you someone that is a pro? Are you someone that is studying it right now, or or have you used marketing analysis in a project before? So, okay, I see about 80% of the people voted now. So I'm gonna close the poll. So it seems like 63% of the people are new to this, so that's good. We're here to help you. So don't be scared. We're here to learn together. Okay, so thank you so much. Okay, so now I'm gonna launch you into breakout rooms in a minute. You're gonna have 5 minutes to introduce each other by name, and then you're gonna talk about what the problem statements that you're working on, maybe in a very summarized way. I'm gonna give you an example of this one. So you're gonna go for user X, there must be a better way to resolve a problem Y. So as an example, for people who are being jailed or deported, there must be a better way to help them fight their immigration case in the new COVID world. Okay, so this is a very specific social impact example that we have here. Then you're gonna share who do you think are your potential customers. So for this particular example, potential customers, you can chat it up. Yeah, adding into the chat, who can they be? Like maybe people in the border, maybe children that have been jailed and separated from their families, maybe just the full family. Different solutions come for each of those. Okay, so in the breakout rooms, you're gonna have 2 minutes to introduce each other and 1 minute to run through this portion, and you're gonna be writing that in this spreadsheet that Sarah sent in the chat. It is a writable PDF, so you can just download it and use it throughout the session. So it has each of the different sections, and we're gonna go through it as we go along. Okay, so for now, I'm gonna send you into your breakout rooms.
Any questions from anybody before we jump in? All right, awesome. So we're gonna do section 1.
Okay, yeah, and give me a second. I'm balancing the breakout rooms right now, so we have enough people in each. Okay, so now you can go ahead and click to join your breakout room. There you go. And click on that PDF file in order to, it is our guide to guide you through the conversation today. Welcome back. How was that? It was quick. We left you a little bit of time to start thinking about the problem statement. But since when you applied to this, you came with the problem statement already defined. I think we're good to go. Okay, so let's go into the first section. So what is segmentation? So segmentation, you think about like you have a sea of people and you need to divide them somehow in order to figure out what groups are potential customers for you. Okay, so this is segmentation. It's a way to divide and separate people into different groups so that you can give them a product that is resolving a problem that they have. And you have different ways to do so. It can be through behaviors, through needs, and things like that. So how do you learn about these customers in order to create that main frame? So you can learn about your customers through in-person interviews, surveys. You can look at data online about different customers. So those are kind of some tools that you can use for interviews of the customers themselves. You can also look at your competitors, what are others doing. So something that we ran into like that is a free website is similarweb.com. It helps you identify what are your customers doing, who are they targeting in those specific areas. So that's a tool that you can use and Google and find in a way some potential competitors in your space. Okay. So let's play
that website again or post it in the chat.
Oh yeah. Sarah, you can add that link to the chat. Thank you. So, okay, so let's go into the matrix for this space for segmentation. So for segmentation, you have 4 spaces, 4 main buckets. You have your geography, like, okay, think of where are people located? Are they in California? Are they in the Midwest? Are they globally? Is it a nation? Is it a region? Is it climate related? Is it dense or not? Then think about like the behaviors that these people are doing in order to like, how do they shop? Do they go online? Do they go to a brick and mortar store? What benefits are they seeing? Are they looking to attract? And then what attitudes toward the product do they have? How do they use it? How will you think that they will use it? So, and what occasions is it used for? Okay. Then in a psychographic, think about the values, the lifestyle, their personality, what interests them. Do they have a hobby of hiking? Do they care about the environment? Things like that. And then in demographics will be more of your typical like, oh, age, income, gender, marital status, education, profession, things of that sort. So you're trying to get into your customers' brain to understand them and segregate them a little bit, to create a product that aligns and segments them in a way. Go ahead into the next one. So now we're gonna talk a little bit about an example. So if I have a big, like an initial idea to create a fashion company that is focusing on sustainability, as Philip mentioned, what is sustainability, right? So we have to like dig a little bit deeper into that sustainability. So is it an environmental conscious consumer that you're trying to attract? So we have 2 examples of 2 potential personas, which is a group of people that have similarities within the segmentation framework that you can group together. Okay, so let's go into an example. So we created 2 examples of 2 personas, but you can have many more personas for your particular space at this point. So an example that we picked is the woman on the right. So we're creating fashion company that is focusing on sustainability. This person is geographically located in the West Coast. The weather tends to be warm, okay. their behavior of purchasing is that they're willing to pay $80 to $100 per item. Okay, they care about circular economy of clothes. So meaning, okay, they want to wear their clothes longer, so the quality of the product will be maybe better. Maybe they care. Yeah, so they want to purchase online. They want maternity clothes that can be worn after pregnancy, not just during the period of the 9 months. So those are kind of like behavioral things, right? Then if you go into a psychographic, it will be that they do not have time to wash their clothes more than once per week. So like something that like something that they used to. They aim to feel good and comfortable in outfits. And in terms of demographics, they're in their early 30s. This group of women are pregnant. It is their first child. They want to look good in these clothes. Uh, they identify as female, and they have income levels of about 100,000 or more, 8 years or so of experience. Okay, so how do we start differentiating this group to the one on the right? So now let's go to example on the one on the right. So this group of women are geographically located in the Midwest. Their weather tends to be colder. So what you design will be for colder weather. In terms of behaviors, they like hiking, camping, they're looking for outdoorsy stuff. They're willing to pay about $35 to $50 per item. They have multiple functional, so they look for multifunctional clothes to be used often. They prefer in-store purchase. They like to go and shop in person. In terms of psychographics, they aim to have clothes that protect them from the weather during outdoor activities. And also they like doing washing clothes once per week. And then in terms of demographics, they are recent college grads. They identify as female, and they're in the early to late 20s. So with incomes of about 60,000. So now you can see that there are two different personas in different spaces in life. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So now we're gonna be sending you into breakout rooms, and you're gonna be doing item 2 in the worksheet. And in this one, what you're gonna be doing is that you're identifying like segregating this group of customers that you identify at the beginning, and then you're gonna be putting them into this segmentation 2 by 2. So think of geographic, think of behavior on psychographic and demographic spaces. Okay, so now I'm gonna be sending you to the breakout rooms unless anyone has a question at this point.
When you're making these, how can you make, I guess, specific assumptions about your potential customers?
So you don't make assumptions. It's based off of your interviews that you've had with your customers. It's based off the research that you did from your competitors. So this is what we're trying to do, is just give you the tool. So you might not have all the information right now. Instead, if you don't have the information, I encourage you to write a question instead. So maybe you might not know where your geographic location might be of your customer. Ask yourself, okay, make a note. I want to look that up later. Who are my competitors, and what are some of the geographic locations that they're targeting? Who have I interviewed before, and can I call upon them to ask them about this question? So if you don't know the answer, it's okay. Just make a note that something to ask, and you evaluate if it is relevant as well to the end product, or to your idea and your company. So you don't have to use all the information, but it's just valuable to know. Does that help answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
So during the breakout, you're gonna have maybe use 4 minutes or so to do like some self exploration about your project, and then share it with each other, because that sharing helps you identify other things that you have not heard or thought about yourself. Okay, so I'm gonna open up the breakout rooms now. You're gonna be joining the same teams as you were before. So go ahead and join your teams. and start thinking about your segmentation. Welcome back. Seems like most everyone is back. So how was it?
It was great. Andriana, I had a question for you.
Yes.
So the psychographic, which you explained really well, we got a bit confused there because what we came up as a group is an individual psychographic would be different, while when it's a team of two, it might be different. And the more number of additives, the aggregate would be far more different. So which psychographic to consider while we evaluate it? It's like a consumer behavior question. Sorry for that.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, that's a good question. I think, you know, do you have common factors between, so what we're looking for is the common factors within the group. If they are vastly different, then that's probably a different population. That's probably a different target population. I know it's kind of tough because it depends on the situation. So if you want to give us, like, if you want to email us or message us at IMAGINEi5.com, you can send us like more details specifically on your project, and we can help you kind of figure out how to break that down for your specific project, kind of help you out. But it really depends. Like, sometimes if you can find that commonality, then that might be one population. But if they're vastly different, and they have different motivations, then you might want to separate it out. I'm sorry, it was like a little vague of a response, but we can talk more specifics about your project.
I understand. Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. So the next part we're going to get into is what is targeting. So in advance, I want to tell you all, we're going to go through quite a few tools here. It's going to be 3 tools more than any other section. Feel free to ask questions. I'm going to stop before I break you out, just to make sure that we're all together. But just, I want to prepare you all. There's going to be 3 tools. But what is targeting? Targeting is selecting a market segment strategically. And what does that mean? So one tool is called SWOT. And what that stands for is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So strengths are the characteristics of your business which give advantages over your competitors. Weaknesses are characteristics of your business which are disadvantages over your competitors. Opportunities are elements that are external to your company. So what is the environment, what's happening right now in the economy? That might be an example. What are needs externally that enable, in this case, social impact, also just success of your business. And some threats, the threats are elements external to your external to your company that enable social impact and also enable the success of your business. So an example of that. So let's look at the fashion company that's focused on sustainable clothing. Let's just say Adriana and I are a team, and we're evaluating what our SWOT is. So our strengths are we have strong supplier relationships. We have connections with within the sustainability space. That means that we're able to really manufacture sustainable clothing and also obtain it from a raw material source that is also ethical. We can do fashion design in-house. We are founders in the West Coast, and we can put in our first 200K for the business. A weakness that we might have is we're a new brand with little marketing knowledge. So we're still trying to figure that out. Another weakness might be is we have little coding experience. So we need to use existing marketplaces at the beginning until we have been able to get in some revenue and profit. So some opportunities within the space of fashion or sustainability. So the fashion industry is the largest contributor to climate change, one of the largest industry contributors to climate change, and people are seeking sustainably sourced clothing. So that's an opportunity area. Another opportunity area is the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals have really created a common language around what it means to be sustainable. So some of the SDGs we might be able to target are climate action, equity, no poverty, life on land. And along with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, there comes a lot of grants and a lot of funding support. So some threats to our business. Shipping costs are super high. That's not really within our control. We don't really have a strong shipping process. We have, creating clothing with unique styles can slow down our supply chain and will increase operation costs. There's a lot of competition in the fashion industry, and it's really difficult to get products into stores rather than selling online. So that's our SWOT. And so based off of the SWOT that we have here, and the two customers that Adriana and I had talked about earlier in the segmentation, which customer would be ideal? So we're gonna, and I wanna emphasize here that the SWOT will give us an indicator of what customers to focus on, but we really need to reassess that against our competitors as well. So I wanna make sure to highlight that. So this is what we mentioned earlier. So, we're based in the West Coast. Our prices are probably gonna be a little bit higher because because shipping costs are high. Maybe we wanna look for a willingness to pay that's a little bit higher. We want customers that care about a circular economy, because that is our strength, sustainable, and that's also the opportunity area. Those strengths and opportunities align. And so, maybe we want income levels that are a little higher. So in that case, we want to focus on this customer over the one based out of the Midwest. Do you guys have any questions on that? This is only an indicator of where we need to focus. It doesn't mean that is the result of the customer, but that is the customer we need to focus on. We need to learn more, and that's where we're going to get into competitive analysis. Do you guys have any questions though before I move on?
Yes, I do. Okay, so with this customer on the West Coast, being that the market is so competitive, how would you reach that customer?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, so this is where we would go into behavioral. Like, where do they purchase their clothing? It says it here, purchase online. I would really dig in. So this is just an example, but I would really dig into, what are their social media markets that they mostly use? Is it mostly Instagram? Is it mostly, there's other opportunity areas. Maybe it's even through their companies. They have 8+ years work experience. Maybe I would want to look into partnering with, maybe these now in the West Coast, there's a huge push towards a longer maternity leave. Maybe there's an opportunity for relationship there. I mean, it really depends on the situation. This is an example of a direction of how you might go through segmentation and SWOT. But in this case, I would want to dig in more into their behaviors, into who do they trust. And I would want to make sure that I establish that trust with the customer. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
And to add to
exactly.
Sarah's as well. So this is one framework, but there is multiple entry points into this framework in order to create your marketing strategy. So beyond analyzing a particular persona and using SWOT, there's 10,000 different tools that we can add in order to understand a specific marketing strategy. So yeah, those are kind of like the 5 C's and then the 4 P's. So there is multiple things that you have to go through in order to create a full-on marketing strategy when you're ready.
Right, and we're wanting to break it down to specific tool sets for your big ideas application. Yeah, awesome. Okay, so another tool.
Both, but with different marketing strategies.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Could you target both customers, but with different marketing strategies, or is that just too much? Why wouldn't you do that? I'm just why are you targeting one?
Yeah, that's a great question. You might do that. It really depends. Maybe right now it's like an effort versus work. Like it's like work and time. You have to evaluate. Like maybe another weakness of ours is like maybe right now we only have 200K, right? So who should we target first that will allow us to get the most financial return? And that might be, and social impact. So that might be this customer that's based in the West Coast that has a higher income. It doesn't mean that you will not. That's another, you have to consistently reevaluate your strategy. And marketing is like, you have to do like testing and things change over time. But this is an opportunity for us to like see, this is not, I guess it kind of all plays into the SWOT analysis, and then also the behaviors, the geographic, psychographic, demographic of your customer. And those are constantly changing. And you might pull 2, you might pull 1. We're just trying to simplify it as much as we can. Does that sound good to you?
Sure, thanks, yep.
All right, so another tool that Philip had brought in earlier is competitive analysis. So what, just on a simple table, what it is you're selecting specific traits, and you're comparing that of your company, those traits of your company against your competitor, to really highlight the strengths that you have, and also the gaps that you might have, and maybe where you need to enter in. So an example of that on the company that we are creating here together is, so, you know, we've identified that we want to do sustainable clothing for pregnant women who care about Mother Earth. That's kind of the customer that we targeted earlier. So we're focusing on maternity clothing that is sustainably sourced and ethical. So looking against a few competitors, you know, I'm just only giving you 2 examples here, and a few examples of like features to look at. But, you know, our company relative to Pine and Sapling, which is a maternity clothing company, they are not ethically sourced. They are eco-friendly, but they are not sustainably sourced. And we're going to talk about how that's going to be perceived later. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But, you know, we have a little bit of a competitive edge. Bowden is a sustainably sourced clothing company, but they are not maternity. They don't have maternity clothing. So that's how we might do a competitive analysis to really highlight our strengths as an organization. All right, any questions before I move on? No? Okay. Another tool is called the 2x2 analysis. So what you do is on an XY table, you select 2 parameters, one on your X and one on the Y. And you compare your company against your competitors. And I'm going to show you what that might look like for the fashion sustainably sourced clothing company. So I picked 2 parameters. I picked sustainable and ethical as one parameter, and the other is maternity focused. So when I look at the industry, I'm going to see, okay, there's a lot of competitors in the fashion industry, in the clothing industry. How do I differentiate? How do I make sure that that I'm in a space that no one else is addressing at this time? So let's look at companies that are highly maternity focused, but they are not sustainable and ethical. Those would be a Pea in the Pod and Seraphim. Maybe we look at perhaps companies that are maternity are not, you know, they have generally all types of clothing for everyone, and they're not sustainable and ethical. Maybe it's Target and Kohl's. And then maternity, also companies that are not maternity focused, but they are highly sustainable and ethical would be Aline Fisher and Bowden. And then I look at really my segment and I see here highly sustainable and ethical, maternity focused. That's an opportunity area, my company. But I see here Pine and Sapling as eco-friendly. They might be perceived as a little bit more closer towards sustainable and ethical, and they are maternity focused. So they might be a competitor. At that point, I might want to look at how I can really differentiate, emphasize the differentiation from Pine and Sapling, put it against another 2x2 analysis perhaps, and evaluate where my segment would be that is not like highly populated by competition. Any questions before I move on? Okay. So right now, what we're going to do is we're going to break you out. You have 21 minutes. I know don't worry, you're not going to be able to finish everything, but just utilize the time as best you can and bounce ideas off of one another. I'm going to show you the worksheet here. So you're going to do a SWOT analysis where you list out your own strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats within your space. And you're going to select a target customer right now. And again, this is not solidified. You know, this is a work in progress for you all. This is just one session, but it's a start. And so that's what we're trying to help you with here. You're going to select some features, and you're gonna identify a few competitors against your own company. And you're gonna just, you know, if let's just say you have it, you can just put an X, or you can leave it blank if you maybe a competitor has this feature or does not have this feature. And then the 2x2 analysis, you're gonna select your parameter. So you're gonna identify what that parameter might be. Maybe it's ethical. And then, you know, another parameter here, maternity focused, you know. And you're gonna identify, this is gonna be a little bit difficult, but what you can do is you can say like the competitors that would lie on this scale, you can write out what those competitors would be. So let's just say, you know, I can put Kohl's, Target, and that just gives you an idea of where each of your competitors might lie. So again, the point of this is that you just take a stab at it. It's not going to be perfect. You're still learning. If you have questions that you haven't thought of, like that you haven't addressed yet, write them down. This is an opportunity to just get that information, realize what you need to collect in order for you to be ready for your proposal. Any questions before we break you out?
Is this available online, the thing that you're filling out, that PDF document, or should we draw it out ourselves?
Yeah, I have it linked on the chat. I'm gonna repost it right now. So you'll be able to download it, and it's an editable PDF, so you can just work on it right there.
Thank you.
No worries. All right.
Okay, so we're gonna be breaking out the breakout rooms, and then so we know that it is 7:45 for you guys, or 6:45. We're running a little bit late, but yeah, we are going to put you for 15 to 20 minutes and go from there. Okay. Okay, seems like everyone is back now.
Awesome. All right, everybody. I hope that wasn't too bad. And you got some questions that came out of that. So if you were able to kind of figure out who some of your competitors were and some of the parameters, that's great. If not, now like you know some of the questions to think about. So what is positioning? We're going to jump in here. So positioning is a unique selling proposition for your product. So what does that look like? Here we go. All right, so we're back to the positioning statement that we talked about earlier. So the statement was, unlike our competitors, our product or brand or idea offers the following differentiators for target customer because the reasons. And so we went through competitors, which really we focused on the 2x2 analysis. We talked about the competitive analysis as well. The target customer, and the differentiators also were addressed through that. The target customer was identified from the segmentation and targeting. And of course, like I mentioned, these things, right now you're still establishing your idea. It's just, you're just collecting information right now, but it's great to have this in the back of your mind to establish this positioning statement for big ideas submission. The reasons, you know, we didn't cover the different, what reasons you might get into, because that's it's variant based off of your own product and what you're working on, but we will give you an example that does talk about the reasons later. We are going to break out just so that you guys can try your best to write a positioning statement with the information that you have right now. If you have missing information, again, ask yourself some questions and leave it as a note there. Any questions before we jump back in to do positioning statement, which is the last part of that worksheet? No? All right. So we're going to give you that chance to just come together, use the first 4 minutes as an opportunity to just write out your positioning statements, and then use the next few minutes to just kind of talk it out with others. Come back, we're going to go through an example. So.
Okay, I opened up breakout rooms again, so you can head that way. Do you have anyone has any questions?
I have a quick question for the hosts. Will the breakout time be reduced so that the workshop can end relatively soon, or are we going the full length?
That's a good question. I'm gonna give that to Adriana. What do you think, Audrey?
So we have about 12 minutes left. Do you think is it too long at this point? We can reduce it to 5 to 6 minutes and go from there.
I think that's a good idea. Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
And then that way we can really go over the example, which I think will be helpful.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So 6 minutes and we'll be back.
Don't worry, we broke this down, Philip, so it won't be like, it won't read like that. Usually we break it down. It's all good.
Hi, can I ask one of y'all a question?
Yeah, what's up?
All my breakout room folks left, but I was wondering, when I was looking at the geographic breakdown for who your target customers are, what is the value or like importance in analyzing that aspect? I was curious what your take was.
Yeah, great question. I guess, so maybe it's access. So for example, the example we gave you, we targeted a West Coast customer. So the value might be on our end. Let's just say we're also from the West Coast. That was one of our strengths. It would be that we have accessibility to really like interviewing the customer, understanding their community culture a little bit better. That might make our marketing stronger, which was a weakness that we had. So that might be one example. A second that we talked about was the shipping costs were high. So, you know, by targeting the West Coast, that would probably be our company headquarters, that we can reduce the shipping costs in that way. So it's like a strategic decision as well. So like marketing, I would say like accessibility to our customer, probably better relationships as well. And then, you know, I guess shipping costs. So in that particular scenario, it would be a strategic piece of data. Does that answer the question, or were you thinking of something else?
No, that definitely makes sense. So it's framed in a sense of strategy is what I'm hearing. And then that doesn't necessarily mean that's who your ideal audience is. That's just where you want to start with.
Totally. Yeah, it's like, I think, especially because right now we're all at a like early stage. So, you know, we have limited time, limited resources, limited amount of money. So like, how can we best utilize that to at least get ourselves kicked off, get that revenue in, get that social impact. And then that way that really generates, then it kind of becomes like a flow. I think it becomes easier after that. So that it's, you know, maybe like you're a company of 20 years and you've built out like a successful fashion industry in the West Coast, then yeah, at that point, like you do need to look at the Midwest. Maybe you do need to expand out of maybe maternity, you know, there's always going to be like pieces of data and information that we have to reassess at that point.
And to add to that, it also adds to the value of like, okay, who is the specific customer that you're trying to develop that specific solution for? Like, well, I'm not going to be building a bridge that is going to cross a major river if there is a drought in some other locations. So right, so it really balances out like, where am I going to be building what kind of solution for whom, like who's the specific whom, because otherwise you're going to boil the ocean with building bridges all over the place.
Totally.
May not be needed.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it's like, for example, in the fashion clothing one, like if we're focused on West Coast, probably the weather is a little bit better. We're not going to make like winter jackets as a part of our sustainable clothing line because it just doesn't make sense for our target market at this time.
Yeah. Awesome,
okay,
thank
so
you.
It seems like everyone is coming back.
Awesome, welcome back. So wow, a lot of words on this slide. Don't worry, we're going to break this down, but what we want to do is there was an example that Philip picked out from a big idea submission that we thought was really great, and we wanted to go through what made it a strong marketing analysis. And something that I want to point out is that they did not use the tools that we showed you guys in a visual format. They wrote it out, and that's perfectly fine. The tools that we provided you are a means to just breaking down the marketing process, the marketing landscape. So I'm going to go through this, and we'll also ask, you're welcome to ask questions. So this is a company that, or this is an idea that focuses on animal feed, and they focus on specifically, actually, let me go back. They focus on black soldier and animal feed. And so they're focusing on insects, high in protein. So we're going to go through, this is the first part of their marketing landscape analysis section. So they talk about the opportunity here in the first sentence up here. They say, with global demand for meat expected to grow 58% and demand for poultry and their products to double by the year 2050, we predict no shortage of demand for animal feed. So that's really their opportunity statement. That was one of the SWOT. In the SWOT analysis, you had the opportunities. So this assumption further is validated by market surveys that we conducted among local poultry and agriculture farms and growers. And so they're focusing here on their customer interviews. They what we talked about during the segmentation piece, which is how are you getting this information? So together with the opportunity area and their discussion with their consumers, they all agree our insects could fill the need for a more sustainable, traceable, and high quality animal. There is also a specific need among the organic poultry producers to find a natural source of, so they go on. But what they're saying here is, what are their customer wants? What do they say? They're highlighting pieces, like they're building up their justification of why their product, who they're targeting, why there's an opportunity area, and why their product is needed in the market. So that's the first part. Then the second part is actually their positioning statement, but they display it a little differently. So while there are other insect products from crickets and mealworms available, that's their competitor. Those are their competitors. Biomeletus believes black soldier flies is the most ideal species for the following reasons, and then they list out all the reasons of why black soldier flies are better insect products for animal feed. So they talk about that, and then they go into a description of why. This is further, not only are they building up why black soldier flies are great, but further why crickets and mealworms in the next part have their limitations. So they talk about metabolism, inefficiencies. If you can see here, they didn't display the positioning in the exact way that we listed it out. But what they did talk about was who their competitors are, why their product is positioned best for animal feed, and why their competitors have some weaknesses, and they're addressing it in the black soldier fly product. And then finally they end it with, while the domestic feed market is large and growing, our current direct competitive environment is small. Only one company in the US offers insects as a feed ingredient. Other companies offer live and dried and they go on to talk about that. In California, where large amounts of agricultural waste are generated, we see a huge opportunity for insect bioconversion strategies. So this is actually they're kind of continuing on their competitive analysis. They're saying, they looked into the market, and within, if you look at feed as one of the parameters on the positioning on the 2x2 analysis, they're the only ones that are using insects. And that's kind of what their innovation piece is, kind of further pushes on why there's an opportunity area here. So any questions about what we talked about for this idea in this company?
I'll just add that, what we went through, what the IMAGINEi5 team took us through is a really sort of extensive landscape market analysis. For your big ideas proposal, really, you have to boil this down into a half a page to 3/4 of a page. But if you can do a lot of the elements that Sarah and Adriana walked you through tonight, the synopsis of that is really what you're looking for your landscape analysis section in your big ideas proposal.
Yeah, definitely. Exactly. Thanks for bringing that up, Philip. Yeah, the positioning statement is really the foundation of what you're going to have in your big ideas proposal. And then everything else that we talked about is going to be further informing and supporting. And you might not have all the answers yet. That's okay. Just it's a good idea to think about it as you go through your project. All right, so that is the end. I know we're over time. We're 20 minutes over time. And thanks for sticking with us. If you want to contact us, you can go to our website at IMAGINEi5.com. We'd be happy to help you with anything you might need. Yeah, thank you again. Adriana, do you have anything to end us with too?
Thank you for staying with us until the end, and don't forget to vote. It is very important. So it is part of that social impact that we're doing here. So go for it and do your part.
Take care. Thank you, Adriana. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everybody who stuck around and for working with us tonight. And reach out to us if you have any questions or big ideas. Take care.
Okay.
Thank you.
Take care.